So Joseph, how's your day going so far?
It's going well. It's
Going
going
well.
well. Absolutely.
Nice. Are you excited for Hell Hath No Fury to be coming out?
Uh, Extremely excited.
Y-
Extremely excited. I'm like a kid at Christmas, I guess.
Have you been able to see the finished movie yet?
No.
Oh, so you got to be really excited then.
Yeah, extremely excited. Jesse's very Jesse's like Santa Claus. We're not allowed to open the presents until Christmas Day, right?
Have you worked with Jesse before?
Yes, I have.
I had spoken with him. I spoke with him first, and then I spoke with Daniel and Dominique. But I so he talked about, they all three of them talked about kind of how Jesse works with the, similar people, tries to bring people back. So I was curious what projects you guys worked on before Hell Hath No Fury.
Yes, I met Jesse. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with Jesse on Debt Collectors 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with Scott Atkins and Lewis,
Uh-huh. Who's also in this?
who's also in this one. So I had it was wonderful working with him on that one and getting to understand his process. And he is definitely an actor's director. And then I also was blessed enough to be with him in the upcoming White Elephant with John Malkovich, Bruce Willis, Olga Karolinko, and Michael Rooker.
Oh, very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So it's gone from, it's been fantastic.
So Hell Hath No Fury is a period piece, and I believe you're the only minority, well, you're the only Black person in the film, only African American in the film, correct?
Yes, correct.
What kind, I mean, how much weight was on your shoulders with that? Like, how did you approach that, knowing that you were representing all minorities, yourself?
It was it's very interesting because the character, his role amongst the men, he's the interpreter. I can say that without giving anything away. He's the
I've seen it. I've seen it.
yeah.
So
Okay. So he's a French interpreter, and which is one thing is great amongst all these men. This Black soldier is the one that's interpreting the words from everyone else. But the weight comes from thinking about the period, 1944, World War II, and the fact that he's literally fighting with men and for men who, back in America, probably in all probability, wouldn't even shake his hand against another group of people who have done nothing against him. So this weird position that he's in, to be fighting a war against someone who's done nothing to him. Almost like what Ali said when he turned down Muhammad Ali, when he turned down to go into the military. How this group over here have done nothing to me, but I can't even go into restaurants or places like this here in my own country. So I kind of walked in thinking, okay, this guy was 25 years before Muhammad Ali. So imagine his mindset. So I kind of used that as his impetus for how he was dealing with it. And internally, the fact that he was the only one in his unit.
that's incredible. Were there any other minorities that worked on the set, like behind the camera? I know there wasn't a lot of people, and it was really because of COVID and everything, it was smaller. Everybody was contained together. Jesse said it was kind of a family feel. But I'm
Yes.
curious if you're the only minority representing the film, or if there were.
No, not at all. That's the great thing about working with Jesse. He really has a very eclectic group of people, and everyone is represented, and that was cool. And it was cool to be able to, in between scenes, to kind of commiserate in a way with others,
And
who
get yourself out of that like oppressive mindset.
mindset, but also uh, watching them watch me. That was very interesting because they understood what this character was going through as well. So it wasn't just something that I was experiencing. Even some of the people behind the camera who were of color, we were able to talk to one another and get, stories about family members and things in between scenes and on breaks and things of that sort that kind of helped me develop private bit. Yeah,
Well, that's awesome that they were there then. I'm sure that played into your performance quite a bit.
absolutely.
I really like that your character, like you said, he was a translator. He was able to do something that these other, people who look down on him in their own country aren't able to do. Like they needed him. So I'm curious, how much French do you know? Did you know before this, and how much did you have to learn for the film?
I had to learn a lot of French because I knew a little, but it was just like conversational. I could say some things here and there and understand some things. But I worked with uh, a few French interpreters and French speaking tutors to kind of, and then on the Dominique and a few other people who speak French, they were able to in between scenes, and we would talk on breaks, and I would have questions. What was interesting, because as an American soldier, especially back in that period, his French wouldn't be as fluid, and that's the thing that they were getting across to me, because I was getting frustrated the fact that it didn't feel as natural to me. And they said, well, you have to remember that his French is coming from one who is processing it as he's saying it and then delivering it. So it wouldn't be as fluid as someone, this guy is born and raised in Harlem, and he's from New York and he's speaking French, and obviously a lot of soldiers, Black soldiers, stayed in France after the war, and so they slowly started to make it a second language.
That's like the level of thinking, like, okay, so this guy's processing it as like you're really looking at this character as a person. And I like that a lot. I wanted to know a little bit about when, do you know, I guess since this movie was finished a little bit ago, I wanted to know about what you've been doing in the meantime, like what other projects you've been working on, what else you have coming in the future.
I period pieces seems to find me. I had the pleasure of doing another period piece based on a true story in the book, Paul's Promise, and that was set in 1958. No, 19. Yeah, it started early on. My character was as a child. In a way, it was kind of interesting. We kind of likened to that. If my character was from Hell Hath No Fury, went to this next movie, like if he came home, this is what he would have become, in 1958, 1960, this older guy, because they aged me. I was 58, 60 in this film, and all white out and all this stuff here, and based on a true story and people's lives, which is kind of interesting and a heavier responsibility.
Is that the first time you've been aged?
Yes.
What,
Yeah.
was it weird looking at yourself like that and thinking, man, I hope I don't look like this, or I hope I do look like this when I get this age?
At first, when I started the aging process, you think that, but then you realize that you're playing someone who has lived, and then when their family members reach out, and some of the family members never even got a chance to see their great grandfather because he had passed, and they were there on the set, and they would see them, and they would come and and cry, and people who knew him would talk about how much Jimmy Lipton was his name, the character, and how I embodied him a lot. And even to this day, they write me and say, thank you so much. And it became more of a real, even more responsibility, because this person lived for someone, Very, very similar to, I think, what Nina had to go through in our film. She, it wasn't a one particular person that she played, but it was just an amalgamation of different women who went through what she went through. And so how she had to pull, and she had that responsibility, which she totally delivered.
For sure. And so that's interesting that you're doing two different period pieces, because that leads me to ask, with, the one you're talking about now being based on a true story, and you're portraying a character that has living relatives, versus, the research you did on Hell Hath No Fury, which is a slightly different time period, and more of a story, even though there's truth there, there's a story woven into it. What do you feel like was the biggest difference in your research between those two things?
Uh, with Hell Have No Fury, I was able to really dig into Black soldiers, African American soldiers during that period, and pull different things, how he would feel, the responsibility, and all these different things, the anger that he had, but he didn't show, the compassion that he showed more towards the quote unquote enemy than his own fellow soldiers did. Whereas with the other one, finding research and video clips of this actual person, and reading from the book and knowing this is how he did certain things, this is the relationship that he had with this person. So I couldn't color so much out of the lines.
Totally makes sense. There's a lot less with like with Hell Hath No Fury, it's like you have more to work with the character and you can kind of adapt. But with the other one, as you said, you can't color out of the lines. You had a very, very strict script, for lack of a better word, script that you're following a real life person. So that makes sense that would be the biggest dissonance there between the two projects.
And they both, which is very interesting, in both projects, I felt a heaviness, but in a very positive way, because each of these men were very proud, and their heart was there, and that's the one thing I took from both. That both Vic and Jim Lipkin, they were very compassionate people, and so each film helped the other. It helped the other a lot.
Do you feel like that happens in your work a lot? I know that these two, characters specifically, and these two films specifically have, obviously, because they're period pieces, that they come together and they reflect one another. But with your other work, do you feel like your other roles that you've played outside of these two inspire or influence your following projects? Like when you do an acting role, even if it's something like Star Trek, do you feel like you take something from every character you play into the next?
Oh, absolutely. I'm very big on backstory. I'm very big on backstory. A lot of things that the audience would never see in the film, but it's just so important to me to try to understand how this guy is feeling. A lot of what I'm talking about right now is a lot of things that I dug into. I do a lot of research because I want to be as authentic, even if it isn't a true story. And I love to just really dig into the psyche of these characters, how the world is today. So I go beyond what's written on the page. I automatically think about, okay, what is the world that they're living in? How are the outside things affecting them? And do they wear it on their sleeve where everyone sees it, or is it something that's brewing internally? And with Private Vic in Hell Have No Fury, there was a lot of that because, though he was amongst other soldiers, not only was he lower in rank, but in life.
Yeah.
So again, he was the one character that really had this battle, but there's certain things he can point out, but he had to do it from a military perspective, and say things to, whether it's to the major or to some of the other soldiers, that was given more of a leeway than it would have occurred if they were out on the street back home.
Right. Exactly. And I don't remember if it was Lovecraft Country. I was watching a show recently, maybe it was Watchmen, and I think it was World War One, but they were, the enemy was dropping flyers and it says, why are you fighting for a country that you can't even use the same restrooms, this and that. So I guess I'm curious if you had spoken to anybody, I know they would be very old, but anybody who had a firsthand account of what that was like, being in the war, even if it wasn't World War II, maybe Vietnam or something else where they're
Oh
not
yes,
being treated.
Absolutely. I have family members that's in the military, neighbors, people from my church, and everyone who I knew that were in the service. I would speak to them and just pick their brain to try to understand what that feeling was like. You know, again, uh, being a second class citizen in your own country, but yet you're wearing this uniform. And he was proud of it. And I think that's where his confusion, unlike Ali, Muhammad Ali, who didn't go to the military, Private Vic, he loved his troops, even though some things that they were doing he wasn't really on board with. You know, he was still that proud soldier. You know, he's one of the soldiers that if he saw some of the protests today, he would be on the fence. He would be confused. In one sense, he would be like, I get the knee, but I also get the flag. And he's one of those guys. And I spoke to some people, and I think that was very interesting to find some Black soldiers who saw it from that perspective. And even though they knew that some things had nothing to do with the other, it was still hard to remove that aspect of it. And so I used a lot of that in his struggle of that thought of, okay, I know on one hand, I represent something bigger than me. But technically, when you put on that uniform, that's something bigger than you as well. So you have these two worlds that's bigger than you. And who are you in all of this?
I really like how deep you go into the psyche of your characters, but also, you know, when they had told me that you were the only minority actor in the film, you're the only Black actor in the film, I really wanted to get this different perspective because, yeah, these other people are from different countries, you know, Dominique, everybody, you know, they have different backgrounds, but like you said, you're the only character that, or you're the only actor with a character that had that particular mindset. And I love your, like, you have a much different approach to this character where everybody else is doing research on you know, the time period, how things are happening in the war. You are looking at this actual, the psyche of this person and how they're being affected by both sides of the world in their entire life. And that ties into what you say about backstory, and I think that that really brings an authentic version of the character. Like I said, I've already seen the movie and I know you haven't, but you know, watching it after I learned that you were the only Black person in it, it gave me a different view to, you know, a lens to see that character through. And I saw a lot of, you know, what you're talking about, like his pride and, you know, a bit of his, you know, what he may not believe in or versus what he does, and kind of having that little bit of dissonance there. And I
And I
think that
think,
you did great.
thank you so much. Thank you. And I think another thing with Vic, I played with in my head. I was like, okay, seeing that he was the French interpreter, imagine being able to every now and then just curse them out right in their face. And they had, and I pictured him doing things like that, just saying the most foul and just angry, profanity laced words. And they're looking at me like, what? I'm like, you know, and that's how he would deal with it. You know, like sometimes they would say something to him, and I just pictured him just going on this quick little tangent of just a few little French profanity laced words that they look, and he's like, you know, they know it's something because the way it's delivered, but they don't know for sure.
Right.
And that was his moment. You know, I imagine where he would get a little chuckle, you know, where he can just look at them and say, you know, something with a smile on his face, and they can be like, "Oh, yeah, okay." And he's not. No, I'm not complimenting you, not at all. So,
And what a form of therapy, like how else better to get out stress than to, you know, cuss these people out and they don't even know about it.
absolutely.
You know, I don't want to keep you too much
No,
longer.
no, I'm fine. I'm
Uh,
fine, Mr.
would Are you looking to explore more period pieces so that you can, you know, learn more about the things that preceded you, or are you hoping to get more roles where you're, you know, in more of a fiction setting, whether, you know, it could be now or something that's not based on history?
Uh, I love them both, and because I have the same process for each. You know, the research, trying to understand the character. With the fiction stuff, I can really create this, you know, whole world, this whole universe that becomes something even beyond. Uh, but when it's something that's kind of based on something, I kind of like the parameters it puts me in, but then it forces me to find, okay, to try to find the nuances of not just his character, but how they would interact in this little box. You know, like Private Vic had to do. Here he is, it's World War II. You know, he's caught in this, you know, situation. He just want to go home. He just want to go home, listen to his music, relax. You know, that's all he wants to do. He just wants to get back to America. Even though it may not be the prettiest place to some, he was proud to wear the uniform. He was proud to be amongst these other soldiers. But he still knew that he had a responsibility to his team, no matter how they felt about him. And I think that's the thing I really loved about his character, was the fact that he was on an island in many ways.
Right.
You know? But he still respected the uniform he was wearing and the team that he had around him, that he was willing to sacrifice his own, I guess, you know, this one older soldier vet had said to me, he goes, you know, it's difficult when you sit there and you look around and you fight in this battle. And it's not just the external battle of the enemy. It's this constant inner battle as well. And that's what I really loved about Private Vic, is that he had this inner battle that not many people knew. But he had a purpose. And I think that's the thing that he felt very proud of, knowing that they relied on him. And I think that's where the little respect that he did get, he definitely got tons of respect from Major Maitland. But the respect that he would get from his fellow troops came from the fact that they needed Vic. They needed Vic to survive in this world. And that's the one strength that he kept. And I think that's what I really loved about the script and the way Jesse allowed for me to play it.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, for a number of reasons, your character stands out, but the level of the extent to which you go through to explore layers of this character, which may not be seen on the surface, all that goes into the way your character is expressed and you know, your dialogue and everything, whether it be in English or not. And I just love how deep you get into these things. I was curious about, like, you had obviously done at least one role with prosthetics, having played a Klingon. And I had spoken to Michael Dorn, who played Worf. So I talked to him quite a bit about that process and everything. But I was curious about, like, to hear from you, somebody who did it in a much more minor capacity than him. What was that prosthetics work like? And is that something you avoid now based on the process? Because I don't think I've seen on any other prosthetic roles on your credits.
Actually, Orville.
Oh yeah, I forgot
Actually, Orville. And you know, my sister likes to say that I look better as a Klingon or a Mocklin, you know, but that's what big sisters are supposed to do. You know, they're supposed to give you a hard time. You know, so they love seeing me in prosthetics, and so they can make fun. But no, I actually, anything that's transformative, you know, that's a physical transformation, and it's very similar to what I do when I do the research for Private Vic, which was more of a mental and emotional transformation. So any sort of transformation, I try not just to show up Joseph. My favorite film of all times, my grandfather used to watch, and I used to watch it with him, was A Man of a Thousand Faces. And if you think about my resume, my characters are so eclectic. They're so different across the board. And I do that intentionally because watching James Cagney in that film, the story of Lon Chaney Jr., with my grandfather over and over and over and over and over and over again. I like to, I actually call myself, on a lot of things that I write, I refer to myself as a man of a thousand faces because I love looking different in everything, because it forces me to go to a place that I normally wouldn't go to as Joseph. So here I am speaking in third person. Sorry, but
no, it's fine. And we're both Joseph, so you know.
Okay,
the audience,
there you go.
The audience can take it as they will.
Yeah. So that's what I love about it, you know, and you know it gets chance to. With Hell Have No Fury, I'm emotionally going to a place, whereas in Star Trek, Orville, Paul's Promise, that's more of a physical transformation.
I love that you mentioned, Lon Chaney and the Man of a Thousand Faces, because that was one thing that I had interviewed Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. And when he was talking about how he was able to get into that, he talked about his past and watching or experiencing Man of a Thousand Faces with his family. And he talked about how that was the one thing that allowed him to really get into being Freddy Krueger. So the fact that you talking about using that to get into these different characters and wear different faces, I think that's awesome, because I mean, it's not just you're not the only one who takes that inspiration. And I think that people you take inspiration from also do that too. And it kind of speaks to where you're looking to for, and how far back you're looking to bring different pieces to your performances. And with your age, I mean, Robert Englund's pushing 80, with your much younger age, for you to look to that far of a range of inspiration and stories, that combined with your research on these period pieces, I think is really going to lend to all your characters going forward in the future. I'm really excited to see what else you do.
Thank you. What was interesting, the team that I was able to really work with, with Timothy Murphy and Louis Mandelaw, Luc Lafontaine, and of course Nina Bergman. It was like the singing group, and you feel like you it's like being part of the Jackson 5, and you're in this big group, and you grew into this music. And I kind of liken myself to Tito, and he just sitting there and he's just playing the guitar and he's looking around, but he has a very important part in the mix of all of this. And working with these amazing actors, and Louis Mandelaw, who I've had the pleasure of working with numerous times, is like my big brother, and I pick his brain. He probably gets tired of me knocking on his door, asking him questions. He's probably like, look, I have to process this. Let me do this, Joseph. And I'm like, Louis, can I talk to you about something, man? And he always takes the time and sits down and allows for me to pull from him. And that's a great thing. And then Luc Lafontaine, that's my guy, who's just a joy. And of course, Timothy Murphy, another amazing, talented actor. So when you have these people you can pull from and help, not just guide you as far as your character, but just understanding the camaraderie that we had amongst each other. It was definitely a bonding experience. And that's how it is on a Jesse V. Johnson project. You got this family affair thing going on. And, I'm glad they adopted me in it. I feel like one of Angela Jolie's kids. And
I was just looking at their picture today. That's hilarious. They
I
just
feel like one of her kids, I'm there with Jesse and everyone else. I'm like, thanks for adopting me. I appreciate this, and being a part of this great family and not feeling different, and that's the beauty about being on something that my man Jesse does,
Well, I think that's hilarious, because even though After you, I'm speaking to Timothy and Nina and Lewis, so I'm excited to hear from them. But everybody I spoke to so far in this project, Daniel, Dominique, and Jesse, have all said the same thing. Building off of what you say, that it was like family because it was so contained. They said that it's like you guys were at camp. You guys really got your camaraderie built up in that time. And I think that comes across on screen, that you guys have probably better chemistry because of how much time you were spending together and how much you were knocking on Lewis's door. I want to, before I wrap, I want to give you a chance to plug anything that you would like to plug, website, social media wise, any other projects you want people to turn to.
Well, absolutely. Paul's Promise. Again, that's the period piece. It's an amazing story about Paul Holderfield Sr. and Jimmy Lipkin, and just Paul Holderfield Sr.'s transformation. I don't want to go into too much details about it. I want people to be excited to catch the film, and I'm very proud of that one. White Elephant with Olga Kurylenko and Michael Rooker.
And John Malkovich.
John Malkovich, come on, man. Bruce Willis, it's just very, very exciting to work on these projects. They're all coming up soon. But more importantly, Hell Have No Fury on November 5th and on streaming November 9th. Don't go by the bootleg, okay? No bootleg, okay? I don't want some of my friends, I've done that before. I was in the film real quickly and I'm in a barbershop. And, this is really perfect Black American neighborhood type stuff. I'm at the barbershop and I walk out and this guy is selling DVDs. It was actually a horror film I was in with Louis Mandelaar, Paranormal, one of those paranormal movies.
616.
616, exactly. Yeah. And I come out and the dude goes, yo, man, I got these movies, bro. And I look, and we hadn't even finished it yet, right? And I'm like, wait a minute. That's my movie. He goes, I know that's my movie too, dog. That's my movie too. I go, no, you don't understand. That really is my movie. This is me. I'm like, see, this is me. And he looks around. He goes, okay, I give it to you for half off. What?
That is
you can't even give me a bootleg version of my movie. So don't bootleg Hell Have No Fury. Pay full price.
Go to theaters.
Film in the theaters or VOD. And it's a hell of a ride.